I almost said TBR. Oh my goodness. This is the face of someone who's tried to start this video like 15 times. Okay. Hey guys, welcome back to Call Me After Coffee. My name is Bree. If you're new here, welcome. And if you've been around for a while, thanks for coming back. It's Monday today when I'm filming this. It's also Monday when you're seeing it, but this is the Monday-iest Monday I have experienced in a long time. I am so tired. I have literally tried to sit down and start this video and I just keep tripping over everything that I'm trying to say and trying to explain. This is a struggle. Anyway, September wrap-up. We are going to do our September wrap-up. I'm gonna start with my favorite book of the month. Why? I don't know. I'm just gonna start with this one. This is Wuthering Heights by Emily Bronte. I know, doesn't say anything on the front, but like, dang, isn't she a pretty book? I loved this book. It is like, it was so good, and the characters are so bad. Like, pretty much every character is awful, but some are just less awful. Catherine and Heathcliff are just atrocious people, just absolutely atrocious. I actually didn't mind young Catherine, and I won't say too much more about the characters because I don't want to spoil anything or about like any character development or anything like that, but I really enjoyed this story. I really liked Nellie. She's the housekeeper who's telling the story, and the narration of this book is just so well done. It's so captivating. Like, I never felt bored. I just constantly wanted to keep reading it. I actually finished the ending of the book. I sat down and read for like 2.5 hours straight because I just didn't want to put the book down, and I needed to know what happened, and I wanted to know the ending, and I just wanted to get there and finish it, and I absolutely loved this book. When I first started reading, I didn't know if I was gonna love it the way that a lot of people do, and honestly, I don't know if I do or not. I haven't read enough reviews really to know, but I do know that a lot of people have said how romantic it is, and I don't really think that this is a romance. I feel like this is a really awful story of obsession and hatred and loathing, and how, like, when you live your life hating other people, it just eats you alive. Like, it's such a sad and tragic book, but you guys know me. I love sad and tragic stories. It didn't make me cry by any means. There's so much sadness and so much tragedy and so many horrible people, and some of those people weren't necessarily treated badly and ended up terrible, and then other people were treated badly and ended up terrible, and it was just like this long chain of horrible people begetting horrible people and being treated unfairly and poorly, and just, my goodness, it was such a good book about such bad people. I'm pretty sure that's how my friend Amara summed it up in a comment the other day, and it was like the most perfect way to explain the book, because it's a beautifully written book about horribly flawed people. Like, if you like really flawed characters, like, everybody. And like, I love Nellie, but even Nellie was flawed, even in real life, everybody is flawed to some extent. I just had such a good time reading this. My only real hang up with this book was the one character, Joseph, who everything that he says is written in an accent, and it's really hard to get. But essentially everything that he says is just super judgmental, and he doesn't really like anybody, so it doesn't really matter exactly what he's saying. You get the gist of it. I can't remember who it was, but somebody did leave a comment for me in one of my last videos. It was like a little link, and I guess it actually translates everything that he said, which would have been really helpful while I was reading. If you left that comment, leave it down here and I will pin it, because it would have been really helpful during the read. That being said, Joseph isn't like a massive part of the story, so it's not really a big deal if you can't pick up on every single thing that he says. But I gave Wuthering Heights 5 stars. I loved it. I thought it was great, and I totally understand why it gets so much hype. It was so good. Next on the pile here is The Fountains of Silence by Ruta Sepetys. I actually was sent this by Penguin Teen, which was super exciting because it's my first book I've ever been sent by a publisher, and it was great. I gave The Fountains of Silence 4.5 stars. It was so good. I really liked it. I read Salt to the Sea in January, I believe, and it's like one of my favorite books that I read this year, also by Ruta Sepetys. And she has 2 other books out. I always forget. She has 2 other books out. One is called Out of the Easy, and I feel like the other one might be called Shades of Grey, but I don't know if I'm getting that mixed up with 50 Shades of Grey, but Grey was in the title, and I feel bad that I can't remember it. I want to read those 2 because I have a feeling she's going to be an author that I'm going to really enjoy all of her books. So I do have 2 other ones that I need to get to. This is set in 1957 in Madrid, and you kind of follow the story of Dan and Anna. Dan is an American who goes to Spain on vacation. He is part Spanish. His mom is actually from Spain, but they live in America. He goes on a vacation at this fancy hotel where he happens to meet Anna, who works there. And Anna's parents, her father died during the Spanish Civil War, and her mother died as a prisoner post-war. But she lost both of her parents. They were on the wrong side of Franco, and her family, unfortunately, was suffering a heavy, heavy burden of oppression, along with lots of other people who lived in their community. If you weren't on his side, you were on the outside. And it kind of shows you what goes on behind the closed doors and what they don't want you to see as a tourist. And it was a really, really interesting look. It had another element to it. It actually goes into like a little bit of history that I didn't know about to do with the orphanages. And it was a really, really interesting story. There were obviously, because it's historical fiction, heavy parts in the book and sad parts in the book. This one did not pull me to tears like Salt to the Sea did. It didn't leave me like a sobbing broken mess, but I would say this one had a really sweet romance in it, and it was a little bit more romance heavy than just like what was going on. And I really liked it. I really liked the romance. I'm not usually a huge fan, or at least I haven't been in the past, but I really loved Dan. I really loved Anna. They were really, really sweet characters, really lovable characters, and you just wanted them to be happy, and I just thought it was such a sweet story. I thought maybe the ending tied up a little bit quick, and it did do a thing that wasn't my favorite, but the kind of trope that I didn't love, I think is something that a lot of people would really enjoy and would find really endearing, so I'm not going to spoil it, but I think that the one little thing that I didn't love about this book, I think a lot of people would love that thing, so I would highly, highly recommend The Fountains of Silence. It was just such a sweet read, and I read it really, really quickly. And then I have Once Upon a River, which gave me the hardest time when it came to reviewing it. I ended up giving it like 3.5 stars, rounded up to 4. And there were things about this story that I really, really liked, but then there were some like hiccups that made it really hard to keep track of people. I found that there were, so quick little like synopsis-y thing. This little girl gets brought into a tavern. I think it's set in, it's like 1887 or something like that. There's a one random line in the book that says this thing happened 500 years. Anyway, you do the math, you get to 1887. It was kind of a confusing way because I had to go back and look to see where that line was to make sure that I was in the right time frame. So that was already a bit of a confusing thing. You didn't get a good feel. But anyway, so Once Upon a River does have, like, it is a magical realism. So anyway, this little girl gets found in a river. This guy brings her to a tavern or a bar or whatever, and they all think that she's dead. And then about an hour or 2 later, she wakes up and she's not dead. But there are 3 sets of people who are trying to claim her as theirs, but she happens to look very similar to all 3 of these girls who are missing. And so the people, I'm like already stumbling because I don't know how to explain it. I feel like I'm making it sound more complicated than it really was. But anyway, you've got these separate veins of people all thinking that this little girl is theirs or belongs to them in some way. And it's very confusing because there's 3 men in particular who get named by a first name, a last name, but sometimes the last name is just the last name by itself, and sometimes the last name is Mr. Last Name. So there's like 3 to 4 different ways that they reference each of these guys And it made it really hard for me to figure out who was who. Like, I kept, like, they would say their first name, and then I didn't really, like, I had to remember what last name that name belonged to. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I was just having a hard time keeping straight. Like, I wish that all the way through they had just each been referenced by one thing, just so it was easier to keep track of in my head. That being said, there was one character, Mr. Armstrong, who was also, I don't even remember his first name, Robert Armstrong, I think. He was my favorite. Anyway, like I said, the names are a little confusing. About halfway through, things got better, and I just kind of learned everything. But anyway, I really loved him. He was a really, really sweet character. He was kind and he was loving, and he was a black man, so everybody was treating him extremely poorly. And I just loved that his character, in the face of, like, adversity and in the face of being different and being judged before you even get to be known, he always put his best foot forward. He always knew how to, like, bring people into his company and change hearts and change minds. And I just loved that he was willing to put in the time to change people's minds, even if the people sucked and were awful in the first place. Like, they shouldn't have acted like that in the first place. But instead of being upset and offended, I really appreciated that he always, like, showed kindness. And, like, I loved his character. I loved who he was. I loved his relationship with his wife and his relationship with his family. And he just had a beautiful heart. And I really, really loved that particular character, probably more than anybody in the book. That being said, the way that the story panned out, it's sort of like a murder mystery a little bit. And also, it's like, it felt a little bit like the river, for the most part, was just a segue to telling a story, which I guess kind of makes sense, but it just, I don't know how to put it. Like, I don't know how to put it, which is why it got a 3.5, because I did enjoy reading it. Like, I know I'm saying all these bad things. I did enjoy reading it. I thought the writing was very whimsical. It was a little bit eerie at times. I liked getting to know the characters as well as I could have. I thought the backstories were interesting. I would say if you're someone who wants to know about trigger warnings and stuff, this is definitely one to look up. I don't want to say too much, but there definitely were multiple different kinds of abuse that happened in this book that I didn't realize it was going to be as dark as it was. But it's also set in the late 1800s, and that kind of thing would have been probably more common and less frowned upon in that period of time. But I really did like it. Like, I think it's worth the read. I just don't think by any means it's going to be anyone's favorite or, like, for everyone. So if it sounds interesting and I haven't completely ruined it for you, I would say try it. But there were definitely things about it that I didn't like. It was a very weird, like, I liked it, but it had its problems. And I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to feel about it. I hate middle of the road books probably more than I hate books that I hate, because I don't know what to do with it. I'm just like, I liked you, but I didn't. But I did. But I don't know. I told you, it's one of those Mondays. I don't know what to do with my life. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Please don't forget to leave me a comment down below. Let me know, what was your favorite book in September? What are you looking forward to reading in October? What are you up to this week? Like, just let me know little tidbits of your lives, because I always find that incredibly interesting and I love talking to you guys. While you're down there, don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already, and the bell next to it so you don't miss future notifications. I do upload most Mondays and Thursdays, and I will talk to you guys all in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.
No, not to it. No, I don't need the trouble. I can't think straight, can't concentrate. Feels like I'm seeing double. Here I'm